And so tonight we're going to be talking about universal design. So this is an FQAS session, universal design for learning, which meets the needs of all students, right? Not just those who label themselves with accommodations or disability needs, things like that. It is meeting the needs of the learner based on how they learn best. And this is FQAS Foundation Student Success Competency 3, and we're on Standard 9 within the frameworks. So if you look here at the FQAS Competency Framework, we are right here within our presentations. We're on the 9th standard where Nope, I apologize, right here. Utilizing very varied strategies to managing engaging learning environments that meet the needs of every learner. So that's going to be one of the key areas of universal design as well, okay, which we'll be getting into here in just one second. So why are we talking about universal design? Well, it's also really intentionally designing your courses for modern teaching, for the needs of students, right? And we kind of have to prepare our courses in a multitude of modalities, even if we're really only teaching in one modality right now. So like I like to tell faculty is that even if you have the luxury of full face-to-face, instruction, we need to have our course design ready for students to have what I like to call anytime, anywhere learning. We like to remove barriers from our students. So our courses should still live in Blackboard, our learning management system. And in this realistic type of scenario, students are accessing it at all hours of the day, right? I think we see that they're submitting work at various times of the day, 11 p.m., after work, on their phone, in between jobs, perhaps. I think all of these are very realistic for our students these days. So if you're not there when confusion happens, but only that course design is, the student will have to either reach out to you via email and wait for a response, or they'll have to try and see you in person the next time that class occurs with that in-class instruction. I mean, can we prevent this? Yes, right? So is your course equipped for learning to happen anytime, anywhere, without you needing to be on call? Can you eliminate questions and prevent questions through your course design? So we want it to be able to stand on its own with clear, flexible pathways that anticipate common barriers that students have instead of you having to answer them repeatedly. Where is this located? When do I turn this in? How do I know if I've met all the requirements? So is your course prepared for students to go back and relearn as well, even if they're in a live course? If they're in that, face-to-face course, that's great. But if I'm reviewing for a test, if I need to access things, if I want to make that connection from the material, if I want to do some further note-taking type thing, then I need to be able to access your course and be able to have that relearning occur. This really awesome phrase that we've put in here, if you can't reach them, you can't teach them, right? And you need to be able to reach them at all points in time if you can through your course. Okay, we have some direct quotes and we have some direct sourcing here. So if you didn't know, CAST is a really great source and a really great site. Until learning has no limits is kind of like their slogan and their catchphrase. And this is all very much like copied and pasted from their website. They are the ones who are updating those guidelines and making sure that the universal design for learning is accessible to everyone, right? It's Creative Commons. Everyone can use that graphic organizer that we're about to show. So it is a framework, right? We're improving teaching and learning based on what we know about the human brain. So like fingerprints, no two brains are alike, right? We all learn in different ways. We all have ways in which we like to access content. I know that those learning preferences aren't necessarily validated anymore, but I think we can all say that, like, I'm an auditory learner, or I'm a visual learner, or I really like to physically do it hands-on, right? Like, we have preferences in how we learn that facilitates it for us and makes it kind of stick and retain for us as well. And UDL really applies well to the idea of how can you make it a great course for all different types of learners. So we're going to look at three main categories. engagement, which will be the why of learning, the representation of the course content itself, so the what of the learning, and then the action and expression, which will be the how of the learning, essentially how they're interacting, how they're expressing, but also how they're submitting their assessments, right? How they're demonstrating their learning, and how you can provide some choice there too, based on the needs of your students and your learners that you have. So here's our graphic organizer. Here's our representation of universal design. And the way they do it is kind of within these columns, right? Each have their own subcategories, and we're about to break them down even further. So first we have multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and then finally action and representation. What it's even trying to show is that we're using different parts of our brain when we're engaging with content and material, right? When we're looking at the representation of material, and then when we're acting upon that material as well.
There's three awesome things that we're going to talk about coming up here. The why, the how, oh, and the what of UDL. That this definitely gives us a lot of details about how that's going to look as we move forward. Delay.
Engagement, the why of learning. We really like to start with the why too, right? That's something that hopefully you've been hearing again and again, that purpose and that relevance. I think we make assumptions that students just understand the why because they registered for your courses, they enrolled for them, they know why they want to be that professional individual in nursing or in PTA, for example, with the faculty that we have present here this evening. But we need to help students want to learn as well, not just, Nick will have something great to add here too that we talked about earlier today. Wanting to learn and knowing that learning is what it should be driving our educational experiences. Okay. So the three subcategories that we have, and it's going to be going down in columns here to break it down and to give you some examples whenever applicable. So welcoming students' interests and identities. Now, everyone's going to be different, of course, right? Like if we can tailor to their interests, if we can personalize it to our students, learn about our students, right? What their personalized interests are, what their future career goals are, then we can make clear statements about the why with purpose in our course. We can give some voice and choice, and we can tailor it to those interests. And then we can also infuse real world application and personalization. All of this will make students want to learn more. It will, right?
If I could
We
just
also
cut in for
want,
a sec, if I could
yeah.
just cut in for a second, that why is so important. The students
Mhm.
of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like they're really more than any generation want to know the why, and what we want for our students is to have them be curious learners that want something more. And you're going to
Mhm.
find a lot of students are checking off the box to try to get to that A. And what we want is to engage them in the idea that they need to learn this information. It's important to their life, and therefore they want to learn it, not just to get a grade.
Yeah,
Okay, we don't want
absolutely.
students to, we want to move them from check the box, get an A to curious and want to continue to learn and grow.
And that will tie in with our reflection that we have too later on, because like students are really not great about reflecting where has my learning happened? Like, where did I start at the beginning of this course or at this program? What were my assumptions? What was my level of knowledge and understanding to like, where am I now? Because again, they just think of it as, well, I did that assessment, I got an A on it, right? I completed that project. I have my portfolio here. It shows you all my work. I did it, but like what learning occurred. And that's something that students really struggle with. So we can provide the effort and persistence, right? So not just at the start of the course, but like maintaining that determination and not having the drop off too, right? Which can be really tricky. Providing actionable feedback of like some really good concrete steps of where to go next will help students with this. Again, here it is. We talked about it at the colloquium last week. Scaffolding, right? Breaking down checkpoints of complex tasks into those checkpoints. It works very well for all types of learners. It really does. And then creating stability with routines, patterns, a modular structure, a flow, because they know what's coming. They know where to prioritize and put their effort in based on previous instances.
And you'll hear
Emo
me talk, and you've heard me talk for 3 years as far as those have been around the and faculty instructors, flow of learning, flow of learning, flow of
yeah,
learning. But I want to go back to that actionable feedback. Like I think that's one of those things that we always don't do as well as we could. Like we put the feedback in Blackboard, but we also have to take the action of showing students how to get there and find that feedback. We also have to give them time to look at the feedback along with clear instructions of how they could take the next steps to grow. And if
mhm.
we don't give clear instructions and we just say, hey, that's great. I like how you did that. And don't say, well, you did a good job, but what if we thought about this, this, and this next? How much farther could you be along in your learning? And tying it back to that student learning thing. I mean, if you go into my office, it's all about student learning. Like that's under my monitor. Like my goal is to improve student learning. I don't have direct students. So my goal is to improve student learning through teaching you all and helping you all to teach other teachers, like the same thing, teach your students even. So sorry, you can move
No, you're
forward there.
fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. And then helping to support their emotional capacity, right? Like normalizing those seeking revisions. Like, hey, you struggled on this assignment, but I just want to let you know that I have office hours. You can come in, we can do some revisions, and maybe you can resubmit this. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Ask for help. Go
These
into the
students,
student
this
support center.
I was just going to say that
Mhm.
the Student Support Center, like normalizing the idea that it's for everybody. It's not
Yeah.
just for students that struggle, it's for every student. Tutoring is for every student. It's not embarrassing. If they're embarrassed, go online and use tutor.com, which is the students got 10 free hours a semester of free tutoring.
Yeah. And there's that encouraging the reflection and planning and the goal setting, right? So, like at the start of a course, let me learn a little bit about you. Let me learn your interest and your self-identify, like how you self-identify, I guess I should say, right? What you're interested in. And then now let's encourage you to set a goal based on what your interests are or your future career plan. And then let's focus on the learning that has occurred from the start of the semester to the end of the semester. That's that emotional capacity. And then along the way, we give those friendly reminders, the pacing suggestions. Hey, you should be at a certain module by now, or we're on checkpoint 4 of the summative work. So don't forget you have, your project, your final deliverable due by this date. Checking in with them emotionally occasionally will help with that social emotional learning piece. I mean, students are really struggling with that mental health capacity right now. Once in a while saying, how's your semester going? What's working well for you? What's not working well for you? What are you, getting challenged with? It doesn't have to be with my class. I just want to know, how are you doing? So our goal is to get expert learners within this category who are purposeful in their learning and reflective in their learning and how they can grow further,
When
right?
I look at that reflective word, Amber, I keep talking about all these like putting journals into your courses. It's a one-on-one between you and the student. The student is going to be more honest than they would be in a discussion board of how they're feeling, right? They're going to hopefully have a good communication based, and that's a great check-in area also. I would
Mhm.
use journals every few weeks maybe to check in with those students and see how they're feeling and what's going well and maybe what needs to improve for them.
Mhm.
And
Wonder,
yes, tutoring is for everyone, Tracy. That's one of my favorite ones. Tutoring for everyone. Ina, did you say have something to say there?
I just wondered what you would use as a prompt for that journal.
That's a great question. It could be
I'd
as
say
simple as, oh, go ahead, Amber.
mid-semester check-in, right? How is the
Uh,
semester going for you? What's going well? What are you struggling with? What challenges do you have? Um, like where do you feel that you're at? Have a conversation like that, you know?
How can I make your experience better in the class so
Yeah.
that you get the most learning possible?
Or a mid-semester survey and include some of those reflective components in it as well. Like I want to know how I'm doing as an instructor. This is me modeling my like reflective. I want the feedback and I want to reflect on how I'm doing as an instructor. And now you should be doing that too. That type of thing as well. I think both would work.
And the question is, would you award points to that? I think
Mm.
that you could, or you you don't have to, but like it would be minimal points, right? It's a formative type thing. I would wrap it around probably an assignment too. I mean, some kind of topic that we're on.
Yeah.
Hey, so this one is representation, which I'm going to take over, Amber, because I left you to yourself there for a while. So the what of learning, helping students to understand the content by reducing the barriers that they have to access and comprehend that information. Our goal here, and I'm going to start with a goal in mind, is expert learners who are resourceful and authentic. Okay, so we have these columns again over here, and we're going to start with perception. And I see Amber's pointing over there right now. We got to make sure that all content is accessible to all learners. And one of the things, and I know it was in the first slide, it was like the student is getting on at 11 o'clock at night. The second question I had on there, or we had on there, was like, if I was in the class with you in live, but I struggled, is the information back in the course shell in 2026? So I can go back and find that information so I can continue to learn maybe what I didn't learn as well in the classroom. So that's something to consider. Like the student went to your class, they could be distracted while they're in that class. Who knows what's going on in their life? Now they leave and they're like, oh man, I really struggled learning that topic today. Can they go into your course and find the same information that you just got done with? Is that accessible to them beyond the time that you had taught that class? Yeah, we put the lectures in there, but maybe there's certain readings that happened or videos that happened in the class. All those things should be accessible to the learners. Okay, making that all accessible. Making sure we have video captions, we have transcripts where provided, or different files available. One of the things that I see a lot of times, and it's part of the flow of learning conversation, is you'll put a PDF. I'll see this in classes sometimes. They'll just put a PDF in a class, in a document. In Blackboard Ultra, it's just a document. And then they don't tell what to do with it, right? And so, like, there's no direction. Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they want more clear direction. Yeah, could we probably figure it out? You got to kind of consider those students that struggle the most and may have the most hard time figuring things out, and just kind of go from that as, okay, would this student struggle to find or know how to use this PDF? Then I better give a little more information. Okay, so just consider that. Visuals, slides, documents. We got to make sure that the immersive readers can also start to interpret them as they're reading online, or leaving information under visuals that are very detailed, saying, hey, if you need more information on this picture because your immersive reader is not working, contact the instructor and ask them for more detail. You can put those types of things in there to make them more accessible.
This is the accessibility column though. I mean, like this is really targeting that. And we're going to have a slide where we talk about the difference between UDL and accessibility, but like this is targeting it right there, just to kind of highlight that.
Language and symbols. It's really important that you set the foundation for any class that you're going to teach with the language that you're going to utilize. In the K-12 world, we had word walls, so the students were always seeing the words that we were using within our class and that they connect those back to the content that we're talking about. But defining explicitly what those terms mean, breaking it down, and maybe sometimes even going back and doing it over and over, explaining difficult jargon or academic language. You need to take some time and identify your presumptions about student background knowledge. So like most of the students like in a class that you have could have had a class before that. Well, did they do well in that class? Is there a pretest to see what they knew from that class if they're coming into another class? You got to kind of consider what they might know, because if they don't have a good background when they come into the class that you're teaching, that could be a struggle. So you may have to reteach some things. I get through the first quiz, I see people struggled, and a lot of that knowledge is prior knowledge. Okay, I may have to go back and reteach things to make sure that these students can move forward in future things. They need that background information. Okay, does that make sense? Enid, I saw it. It looked like an aha face that you gave me there, Enid. Or I finally got to the point, one of those two.
But I just figured out what the A and the N was down in the bottom corner.
Oh man, I thought I had a mind-blowing statement. All right. Provide
Sorry.
students with previous students' example work, model examples on big projects. Like if there's something really important that um and it's more difficult, show what examples could be. And then have that discussion of these are examples, these aren't the ones that you copy, because that can happen too. But especially when you're having choice and voice, these are the examples, but make a choice of how you want to go in this. Building knowledge. And this goes kind of back to the foundational knowledge, both of the terms and the content that was before. You need to support a way of that you connect prior knowledge with future knowledge. I think that we call that interleaving also, within other conversations we've had within our courses. Highlight what's essential and activate prior knowledge. Oh, shoot. Look at that. This is Amber's slide, and I'm just rocking this slide right now, not even practicing it. And I see interleaving on there. Yeah, so highlight that essential and active prior knowledge. Connect to real world applications. That's really cool in a lot of your classes. PTA, nursing. I mean, you can really connect to real world examples and bring them right into the classroom. A lot of that stuff can be hands-on when they go out into the clinics that you all host. I'm talking PTA and nursing here because that's what we have in the room right now. But then organize those thoughts and reflect. Okay, and we go back to that reflection piece that was in the last Y area. So again, our goal is expert learners who are resourceful and authentic. So Amber's got to hit that.
And then the how of learning, so the action and expression. So we've engaged them, right? And hopefully like made them want to learn the content. We've showed them what the content is, removed barriers for how to access that content and represent the content, the what of the course, right? And now how we want students to be able to demonstrate what they know without barriers, but also maybe providing them some choice that lends itself to their what they have strengths in, right? What they feel like they can do more capably. So with interaction, the subcategory here, multiple ways to respond, navigate, and move through the content, right? In addition to like student to student interaction, student to instructor interaction, etc. Can we minimize the number of platforms that students are having to access, right? And logins, external sites, meaning can we house more things in Blackboard? What tools do we have at our disposal? How can we embed things, right? Like with the OER contents that I've been talking about recently, we can embed a lot of that content so that students aren't having to go externally, figure out where they are, that new navigation, that flow, they can stay in the same environment they've been used to. And then give them flexibility with how they interact with things, watching it, reading it, listening. Then we have their expression and communication. So can we, at the least, give them some choice in the modality and format in which they submit their work, right? Are you okay with it being a project where, sure, it's a typical slideshow presentation, but could they also do a video recording? Could they make a podcast? Could they provide an infographic? There's all different kinds of technology that you can leverage to provide that choice to students. Can we make rubrics that are focused on the key skills that are being assessed rather than grammar, creativity, and the design, right? Because marking students down for that doesn't necessarily make them feel like they're able to demonstrate their learning as much. That's what we want the most, right? So, I mean, like if it's rife of errors, I understand, but can we focus more points and more parts of the rubric to the meat of the skills that we're trying to assess? And then address how students are expected to communicate as well. Some norms, some biases that will always help. Okay, then finally, strategy development. So we're going to help them set goals and plan for challenges with checklists and timelines. Again, we're setting goals, we're reflecting. We're going to provide step-by-step instructions, very thorough instructions, kind of like Nick was saying. And maybe we can provide an alternative of video tutorials along the way, or show examples of previous students' work, things like that. And then we're going to give feedback along the way. Remember, actionable feedback to provide guidance, monitor progress with like next steps. That's that actionable feedback. It's a really hard line to balance because You don't want to give the answer away. You don't want to give the ending away. You want the students to get there on their own, but yet you want to start to push them in the right direction or show them where their gap is, right? Where they're not meeting a certain skill or a certain competency. So here we're hoping that our learners are strategic and then action oriented with how they're demonstrating what they know. Anything else, Nick?
You covered that wonderfully.
Thank you. Just want to double check.
I just got myself
switch
back
this line.
from the 10 minutes I missed there, so I feel a lot better about myself.
That's
All
good.
right, UDL and accessibility. I mean, they work hand in hand. UDL doesn't necessarily fully cover accessibility, and accessibility doesn't necessarily fully cover UDL. So it's one small piece, that accessibility. And so as we look at these columns here, we can actually kind of compare accessibility versus UDL, and accessibility is reactive to support one student's needs, or it could be a few students' needs in a class that have been recognized as needing support. UDL, when you do the UDL, the Universal Design for Learning, you're actually being proactive in making your course more available to every student. So the content's more open and free to them all. We go to that second row down. That's not a white column or it's white cell. Supports legal requirements for access and accommodation. So right now we are in the midst of a real effort as a team at Blackhawk of moving our courses closer to 95% accessible within Blackboard Ultra's Ally. That's for you, Tracy, because I know you wanted an exact percent. So closer to 95%. Doesn't mean we have to be 95%, but we want to get close as we can to that. So we want to make things as accessible as possible. So for example, a student looks at that has a disability and they can't see the pictures as well, and they have the screen reader that can read and talk to them about what that is. We want that to be immersive reading. We have videos with closed captioning so that there's folks that have some struggles with the hearing, then they can read the closed captioning. You also might have some students that struggle with English not being their first language. You can actually use USIA, go in there, change the transcript and the closed captioning to their language. So that would make it more accessible to those students. UDL supports better learning outcomes for everyone. Okay, so that's our goal, is everyone can learn in our classes. And like I said, you aim at the student that's going to struggle the most, and you're going to be able to make sure that everyone can understand what's going on in your class. Back over to the accessibility, the last row, removes barriers for students with documented disabilities or specific needs. You know, if we make accessibility moves and changes in our course, well, we're going to help to remove those barriers for those students that have documented disabilities, but we're also going to hit those students that do not have documented, because there's those students too. UDL is a proactive course design, so all learners can access, engage, and demonstrate regardless of ability. So that's a great question within the USIA there, Tracy. You actually have to go in and let's say someone speaks Italian. Then what would happen there is you can go into USIA and you can pull the transcript and change that over within the USIA video to that Italian language. So it would translate that over. And they would probably have to request that from you because if you didn't know, but if you notice that students are struggling, you may ask some questions and see, well, are you having trouble accessing the information? Can you not find the information? No, I can find the information. Do you understand the information? Well, no. Well, why not? And maybe they say, well, English is my second language, and right. Maybe we have to do some questioning to get to what we need to, because sometimes folks aren't just going to tell you right away what the issue is, right? We got to get to the bottom line and find the way that best helps them learn. A course design with UDL in mind, like I said at the beginning, automatically supports accessibility, but accessibility alone does not mean a course meets UDL guidelines. Anything else, Amber, there?
Nope.
Oh,
You got it. Rocked it.
okay, so I'm going to start this one, then Amber's going to take it away because Enid noticed my N and the A on there. All right, so why UDL? Today's college students. We got all kinds of students going to Blackhawk Tech. We have working students. They might be there not just for 2 years. They might be there 3-4 years. We got first generation college learners. Their parents, by definition, never went to college. So these students are coming into the college with no experience person in their family that's been there before. So they don't have people as guides. Like when my students, my kids go to college, if they choose that route, I can guide them and my wife can guide them. We've both been to college. Lots of students, I believe it's 43% from the research I did during the last semester. It's around 43% of students that have parents that never went to college. So therefore, since they didn't go to college, they don't have that knowledge. Neurodivergent students, we have the students with disabilities, and they could be undocumented. We talked about the English language learners, and we have students with caregiver responsibilities. Like, look at tomorrow, it's supposed to be like negative 48 degrees, and all the schools are canceling, right? And so, are all of our students going to make it to class? Because they could be parents of these students that don't have daycare. So, thankfully, these schools in the area are having some forward-looking vision, and they're saying, hey, you know, it's going to be really bad tomorrow. We need to cancel so parents can make some plans. So maybe we'll get more parents than we would have if it was a last second thing. But considering that, but they also could be taking care of their parents, their family members that have other things going on. So the benefits of UDL for faculty, hey, if things are more clear and everything's in there, we're probably going to get less emails from those students or messages. If things are clear and easy to understand, maybe we have less late submissions. Maybe we don't need to use extension requests for different things. And potentially, because it's clear, it's understandable, maybe academic integrity issues are pushed aside. You know, when people don't understand something, they may just try to find an easier way to get it done because they're running late because they didn't understand something.
Mhm.
And some more student engagement. If students can find the content, there's a good flow. They can see the directions are there and they know what to do. We're probably going to have higher engagement, which would also potentially increase the grades, but make it easier for grading. And we are going to have the stronger outcomes and learning results because the whole goal is student learning.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And then some key takeaways. I mean, some of these are getting, you know, like repetitive, but it really kind of drives home the message and it ties in with these benefits, right? So our key takeaways is that universal design removes barriers for students, right? It's smart course design upfront, proactive, and it saves time later on with repetitive questions and requests for accommodations. You won't have to worry about that as much with your course having the universal design principles. And it's about providing options. I mean, not a free for all and not doing everything at once. It's not to say you can have a choice in everything you're doing, but like even small adjustments will have a big impact overall. So how do you know that your course is starting to meet these universal design for learning guidelines? Well, we would hope that students can access and understand your content in multiple ways. They don't need to ask for alternatives, right? Like, oh, this immersive reader isn't picking it up. Can you provide me the PDF file of this instead so I can use the immersive reader? They're getting some choice in how to demonstrate their learning when applicable. The expectations, instructions, and deadlines are very clear. Your course supports self-regulation, and this is a tough one, right? Some checklists that you can provide students, some milestones, some reflection prompts where applicable, some goal setting things. This is very hard to infuse in courses naturally, but there are good points within the course where it does lend itself well. Early on within the course to get to know your students, right? Some introductory self-identification, get to know them so that you can personalize things for them later on, and checking in minimally halfway through the course, right? But who's to say if you have a project, a final big project summative due in 2-3 weeks, you strategically place some office hour sessions, virtual or in person, whatever the case is, and you do a check-in then too. How is this project going for you? What's going well? What are you struggling with? What questions do you still have? What is still not clear? I saw that in checkpoint 1, you didn't quite understand this. Do you feel better about it now? Or do you feel like it's still going to be a challenge for you? Tools, materials, and assignments work on multiple devices. Think phones. We're starting to look into it more and more about how many of our students are actually accessing their course content through a mobile device, and it's increasing. I mean, to me, it was nuts that high school students felt like they could type 2 to 3 full paragraphs on a phone, like on we were working on Google Docs, and I just thought, how can you find this? How can you not find this frustrating and just a horrible experience? But they're like, I do everything on my
They
phone.
love it.
This is fine. I don't care. Like, it's no big deal.
Hey, Amber, do you have Blackboard open in the background?
Yes, I do.
Could you open that up once?
Yes. Oh, my battery's okay.
And so a way that you could actually, like, if you look at this right here, you can just leave it right here. This is perfect. Can you just take his screen and minimize it and then pull it over to the side? So she's going next to the X up there in the top right, and she's just going to shrink that up. Why don't you shrink and pull to the left so your email's not showing maybe? But you can see kind of as you're doing that, that it shrinks like it would a cell phone. So if she makes that as small as possible, that's a way that you could test and see how things show on the within your course. Now, if you go to Canva Foundations Level 2, let's click on that one. Oh, we're going to make it smaller like an iPhone. Okay, and you're going to see that the blocks that were built into there are going to start to stack. So the Blackboard Ultra actually just rotates those columns and moves them into a linear space so it can easily be accessible within a phone environment. So that's a way that you could check and test things.
And honestly, I truly think that number is only going to increase because Gen Alpha, having worked with them recently, they're coming down the line. They don't have any issues with doing things like this on their phone. This would drive me nuts, right? With like the orientation and having to do it in this way, and like also having to like go like this occasionally. It doesn't bother them at all.
But let's say I'm 35, I have small kids, I'm out groceries at the grocery store. I'm like, oh crud, I was supposed to submit an assignment or fill out a quiz before 6 o'clock, and it's 5:45 and they're at the grocery store. Like they could jump on their phone and complete that anywhere. Thanks for doing that there, Amber.
Yeah, of course. No, that was a good idea. And then the other one that I think the 2 bullet points, this is the other one that's very difficult. They can transfer their learning, right? So it's not just, again, check the box, I'm done, I did the assignments, I passed the course, but they apply it to those real world contexts with the connections that they've made, the transfer of their learning, realizing how they've come full circle. So it's a tough one. But again, ultimately, less time troubleshooting, answering repetitive questions, more time facilitating this meaningful learning for students. So
start small. Figure out a course that you believe needs to become more of a accessible to all students. And you could just start with one assignment, right? Maybe you're finding a way that you can make some kind of choice within that assignment. Maybe it's a whole module or a week. You start there, but just start small. Eventually, if it works and you start to see some progress, now go into another course or go into different weeks. But Amber likes these little slogans, reuse and repeat. Find what works and repeat it. Use those Blackboard LMS tools, because if you build things within Blackboard, it's going to be more accessible to students. Like, it's just way better. But small changes, like make 1% changes. That's what we always talk about, is like, just improve your course 1% each day, and you're going to become more a course with more universal design for learning.
Reflect yourself too as instructors, as faculty. Like, that's what good instructors do. When we're tasked with having to do it formally on paper, it's kind of like, yeah, well, duh. I'm like always reflecting, right? I reflect as I'm teaching. After a lesson has occurred, I reflect on that mentally and what I could have done better. Ooh, that lesson flopped. Like, and it hasn't flopped like that for me before. What did I do? What could I have done better? What happened? What were the dynamics that made that lesson change for me, right? I'm setting goals for the week. I'm setting goals for the day. I'm setting goals for the month. I want my students to be at a certain point and at a certain juncture within a certain time, right? So we're always doing this, but taking notes in the course during instruction can help you reflect with this in a document page that's not visible to students. Have you identified a barrier that your students face often in your courses, right? take notes maybe on repeated student email questions, glitches that occurred, changes that you were able to make in this one section, but you didn't get to translate it to another or address it in between semesters. Now I have time, I have it in my notes, I have it in this blank or this visible, not visible document page to students, and now I can address it in all of my courses when I have a couple weeks to do it. Then finally, do you test your courses in student preview before you open them? I hope you do. I hope you, like when I worked with Kelsey Doyle recently and we were doing medical terminology, I said, okay, we're in the home stretch. And guess what? My goal is to try and break your course in a student preview. I'm going to enter it into student preview every day, and I'm going to go module by module, and I'm going to try and break your course. And if something glitches along the way, I'll let you know, right? Like, that student preview is meant to see what barriers do they have, what glitches could occur. We become so immune to our courses too, that if you do it from a student preview, it helps you kind of like look at it through their lens, what questions might occur, things like that.
The same thing when you're doing the student previews, it's actually a good grade book preview also. If you go in there and do some of the work and then you save as you leave to go back into the instructor area, you can start to see how that grade book is impacted when work is done, whether the formula is working right. There's lots of things because you want students to be able to look at their grades in the grade book and have good knowledge of how they're doing. And if things aren't set up correctly, well, that could be really frustrating and a struggle for lots of students. So grade book has to be accessible also.
I worked with a couple of faculty recently who, had they opened the course for their students would have seen that they already had Fs because of automatic zeros and the due dates that weren't set up correctly in the course. Imagine my experience if I enter your course and I automatically see that I have an F.
Yeah, I
So,
worked with somebody today and they didn't have their grade book set up. I think it was actually set to weighted, but they had points. Then I could see in there, if you see red on the top of a grade book column, that means the due date's already past due. Well, we just started classes. And so they still had their 2025 dates in there from last spring.
Yeah.
And then if you see a line, a black line coming this way through it, that means they're not visible to students. Okay, well,
Mhm.
if we're not getting assignments in and you're wondering why, well, you got to make it visible. Like that's the other thing with making things accessible is making sure the right things are accessible at the right time, right? So making
Oh,
sure those are visible.
something else we learned, if you turn an assignment page not visible to students after the fact, this is something a faculty member was kind of experimenting with. They were having students try and go back in and do these late submissions, and they just wanted to turn the visibility off. Well, by doing that, it turned off the gradebook column visibility as well. So I still couldn't go back and see what grade I got on that assignment from a week ago because the assignment was no longer visible. So something to be aware of and keep in mind too. But
So we got the conclusion and some question and answer. Then we're going to show you the survey, which we have some new questions on the survey because we would really like to dig in a little deeper in how we can help people with the different topics we're showing. But the key takeaways, like you don't have to be an expert in universal design for learning. What you do need to be is a person who's trying to think of ways to make things more clear for your students and to make sure that students have avenues that they can be the most successful. You don't have to redesign everything. You can start small and do one thing at a time and just start to build a more accessible course day by day. Yeah, a lot of you are already doing some of these things, and you didn't know what it was called. Well, now you know it's UDL. When you're being more clear, when you're considering the why, you're doing some of the starting points of UDL.
yeah, we want to thank you for your time. I mean, this is another kind of visual for universal design for learning. We have ways to get a hold of us, of course, the resources that we have at your disposal, our YouTube channel, but also faculty resources, the main navigation page you want to go to for this, which the recording will be housed there, but we're also putting it in our new faculty experience for our adjunct faculty as well.